and welcome to Wellness Live. We are so excited to have you join us today. My name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and this session is brought to you by the Living Whole Wellness Program here at Loma Linda University Health. So it is summer here, and here in Southern California, it gets quite hot. And many of us might be worried about our waistlines and our health. Imagine the summertime, and imagine all of the wonderful vegetables and fruits that are actually coming alive during this time. So we have a very, very special guest with us. His name is Corey Geen, and he has worked for our School of Allied Health Professions for 8 years. And so we are very excited to have him here, and he has the wonderful, I will call it the dynamic duo of not only being a chef, but very recently also became a registered dietitian. So he is the perfect one to talk to you about summertime and just vegging out. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Corey Geen.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Yes, my position here at Loma Linda University is in a kitchen and in a classroom. And I really enjoy teaching about food service and especially being a part of food service here on our campus. And Olivia has asked me today to have a discussion about some of the ways that we can incorporate more vegetables into daily cooking and what we're doing in our kitchens every day. Of course, here on our campus, we are constantly trying to do this because we are a vegetarian campus. And so including more vegetables in our diets is something that we almost take for granted. But I've got a couple of things that I'd like to go over that are just general ideas about how I think about food, how I think about designing recipes, and how I think about including more veggies and including more nutritional aspects in our food as well. Of course, the first question that should be asked is, how much are we supposed to be getting every day? We talk about how we're supposed to include all these veggies, and we're supposed to include whole foods and whole grains, et cetera, but how much is really recommended? According to the USDA guidelines, with fruits, we're talking only about 1.5 to 2 cups a day. It doesn't really mean a lot of fruits and vegetables. Of course, this is the minimum guideline. More is always recommended in this area, but 1.5 to 2 cups. And what does that look like? Well, 1 small apple is equal to 1 cup of fruit. So if you were to eat a small amount of fruit at breakfast and then maybe a fruit for dessert, you would essentially cover this one guideline. Very similar with veggies. 2.5 to 3 cups of veggies a day is all that's required, recommended by the USDA. More if you can get it is great, but we're not talking about adding huge quantities of fruits and vegetables. So what we're going to do in this discussion is talk about how we can add smaller quantities, add some variety, add some fun to our food using what we have in the vegetable world. Second question that's always asked is the form of this product important? From a nutrition perspective, yes, absolutely it is. Fried foods, although French fries are considered to be a vegetable product, they are made with potatoes. Having them deep fried adds so much fat to it that generally speaking, we're looking at foods that are whole and not deep fried, but cooked in other ways. Also, the idea of leaving the skin on things, because there's a whole lot of nutrition that's right underneath the skin. I have an example here of a baked potato, and what I typically see people doing with baked potatoes is eat all the fluffy white interior part and leave the skin as just that shell that holds the good stuff inside, when we really would love to see people eating the skins. So when I cook baked potatoes, I'll scrub the outside really well. I use just a green scrub pad that I would use to wash dishes. I have one set aside for veggies, and I just scrub the outside really good with that. Bake it as I normally would, and then that skin is ready to eat, perfectly clean and wholesome. Also, the other thing is getting a large variety in our diet. We like to see lots of color. We like to see a lot of different types of things being eaten. If you're a particular lover of one vegetable like carrots, that's great. Eat carrots all the time. But remember that you need something other than just carrots. So getting some other things in your diet is good too. So as a vegetarian chef, and I have been a vegetarian most of my life, there are a couple of foods that I would love to never see again. One of those is the tossed salad. It seems like whenever I go to a restaurant, whenever I go out to eat somewhere, If there is a vegetarian menu item, it's either a salad of some sort, a pasta, or it's based on a mushroom, like a portobello mushroom. You know what? There's so many other options that we can do, so much more fun, creative stuff that can happen, and I would love to see people doing more of that. That being said, the salad should not be overlooked. We can take something as simple as a tossed green salad, which we all know how to make and which we all love to make, and we can recreate it in a different way using essentially the same ingredients, the same cuts of ingredients, etc., and we can make that thing into something completely different. For instance, if we had just a tossed green salad, I can take all those same ingredients and deconstruct that salad on the plate. And you can see in the middle of this illustration, I just have, instead of tossing all that stuff together, I just put each of the components in a different place on the table, or excuse me, on the plate. Now you can see all those fresh ingredients. You can see a lot of color. There's some intrigue in the plate, and people can pick and choose how they're going to combine those ingredients and make each bite a little bit different. Moving from that into something a little bit more artistic, we can do things like stacked salads, where I just take a little mold that has an open top and bottom, put it on the plate, and then stack each of my ingredients in the mold, pull the mold off, and I'm left with a beautiful presentation, different form, same ingredients, looks like a completely new dish, gives it a lot more intrigue, a lot more fun. Another idea is, don't give up the foods that you love. Yes, we're talking about incorporating more fruits and vegetables, but we're not saying that you have to give up your grilled cheese sandwich or your chili or other things. What we're saying is maybe take those things that you already know how to make, that you make on a regular basis, that you love making, that you love eating, and find ways of incorporating veggies into those things. I love this example of an artisan bread, toasted, grilled really well, and some melty cheese inside, and some fresh veggies mixed into it. Those veggies bring so much flavor, so much color, and so much intrigue into that one dish. It makes it so much more fun to eat. Another one is chili. Chili is a very simple dish of beans, typically a meat item of some kind, and a very savory, spicy sauce. If you were to add mixed vegetables into that, you're getting those veggies in there and still having a very hearty, very substantial dish. Pastas, of course, are a natural place to add a lot of ingredients, a lot of veggies. But also think about bean and cheese burritos. Roasted vegetables inside of a bean and cheese burrito makes that into a completely different dish and so much more fun. So you're thinking, okay, here's this chef, he's talking about all these vegetables, and you know what? I don't really like veggies. They're not that interesting to me. And so I want to break that out a little bit and kind of say, why could that be for you? If you were to name all of the vegetables and fruits just off the top of your head that you can think of, how many do you think you could name all at once? When I ask this in my classes, I typically get a response where somewhere between 25, 30 individual items that people can name. That is such a small component, such a small sliver of what's available in the marketplace. I love this little illustration. It gives kind of a check-off list of what we could buy if we go to a grocery store. And it's apples, bananas, grapes, strawberries, etc. The things that we're very used to. But if that's all we had to choose from, that would be very limiting, and it just wouldn't give us that variety, wouldn't give us that intrigue that we really want. And when we think about what's available in our grocery stores even, a typical grocery store, okay, so now we're up to 75, 100, maybe 150 items if it's a really good grocery store. If you were to go to a store that's specialized in produce, you could up that to 200 items. However, when you think about how many are available in the natural world, for instance, just in citrus, we're talking about over 3,000 varieties of products just in the world of citrus. And that's the same for every different fruit and vegetable that is available in our world today. And we have only scratched the surface of eating fruits and veggies and the things that are available in our marketplace. One of the biggest things that I encourage my students to do is look for things that are unique, look for things they've never eaten before. If you go to the grocery store and you see something new, don't know how to cook it, that's fine. Grab it off the shelf, take it home, get on the internet, Look it up, find out what other people are doing with it. Ask your grocer, how would they prepare it? And just venture out a little bit and see some new things on your plate and in your kitchen, and be creative and be adventurous. I think we have a couple of questions now.
Yes, thank you, Corey. That's excellent information so far. So we have a couple questions from you. Now, you, the audience, have the ability to actually give us some questions live. So go ahead and type all your questions in, and we'll ask our expert, Corey. So our first question here is from Monty77B. Ask, why is it so important? I've heard this before, a variety, but never really understood why it's so important.
That's an excellent question. A variety of fruits and vegetables, because the nutritional components that are in each individual different fruit or vegetable, they vary. So you're going to have some things that have more concentration of one nutrient versus another. Our bodies need to have a wide spectrum of nutrients. So in order to provide what our bodies need, we really need to have a large variety of fruits and vegetables. Now, there's a concept of combining for protein completion. So a lot of times we hear people say that you need to eat beans and grains together at the same meal in order to get a complete protein. That's an excellent example of what we're talking about nutrients in general. That idea of protein combinations, we've actually disproved that. We know now that we can eat different things at different meals across the entire spectrum of our day, and it does fulfill our requirements for protein. But as long as we're getting a lot of variety, we're making sure we're covering the basis of every nutrient that our body needs.
And just to add, variety makes it more interesting, like you
Absolutely.
mentioned. So not only that it's good for you, it's actually more fun.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
So the next question we have here, is there a specific way to prepare the veggies when adding it to, say, chili?
A specific way?
Yeah.
No, there isn't. And chili is a great dish because you can essentially just pour it all into a pot and let it cook until it's all done. Now, different vegetables will have different lengths of time that they need to be completely cooked. For instance, if I were to take a zucchini, which is a very soft, high water content vegetable, next to a carrot, which is much more dense, it's going to take longer for the carrot to complete cooking, right? It's going to take longer for that carrot to soften up and really become edible. So if I throw zucchinis and carrots and onions and everything in at the same time, I might get some zucchini that are a little bit soft, more soft than I want by the time my carrots are done. So you kind of have to play with it a little bit. Or you can just work with the cut sizes. If I cut the zucchini a little bit bigger than the carrots, well, then they will be able to cook together at the same rate. The carrots, which are smaller, the heat will absorb into them quicker, cook them faster than the bigger pieces of the zucchini.
Right, right. Excellent. So another question we have coming in, what veggie is the most nutritious? Is that a fair question?
Well, actually, it's a question that's asked a lot, so I guess we can call it fair.
Okay.
And what we have found is that the sweet potato is the one that we would consider to be the closest to complete in nutrition. And that is a really neat thing because sweet potatoes are so dynamic, so useful in the kitchen, so variable in what you can do with them. I like to just take them and, just like I said with a baked potato, clean the skin on the outside, put a little bit of oil on them and throw them right into a hot oven without any foil or anything else, and let them roast until I can take a skewer and push it all the way through and it's soft all the way through. Take them out of the oven, put them in a refrigerator, let them cool down. The next day they become snack food. Put them in your bag, take them to work with you. All you have to do is peel the skin off the outside and start eating, and you've got an excellent snack.
Wonderful.
So they're a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Another question that we have is, I've got almost no time to prepare these types of foods. Is there a particular combination of foods that are not only balanced but also fast?
Okay, people always want fast when it comes to cooking, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit more as we continue this discussion. Are there individual foods that I would recommend to people that are fast? I would say if truly fast is what you're looking for, an omelet is probably going to be the easiest thing to do. Because an omelet doesn't take much time to create. The eggs cook very quickly, the veggies cook very quickly when you cut them small. So that's an easy one to do very fast. Another one is pasta. It takes longer typically to boil the noodles than it does to cook the veggies that go into them. So those are both ideas that I think you could play with a little bit.
Okay, so a quick question about salads. A lot of times we hear that the salad dressing is kind of the worst part, you know, of the salad. Any tips for getting a healthy salad dressing, and can you speak to the herbs and vegetables, or herbs and spices?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I cover that in the next part of this discussion too. But to hit on that quickly, the one thing that I have always noticed is people overdress salads dramatically. It does not take a lot of dressing. And the reason I think most people are doing this is because with the fat that comes with the salad dressings, there's a lot of satiety that happens with those fatty dressings. So we're really programmed, I think, in our modern world and the foods that we're typically eating to look for things that are high in fat, to look for things that are high in carbohydrates, to look for things that are high in sugars and salts. All of those are the components that come with the salad dressing. Those are not the components that will come with the veggies that the salad dressing is going on. So my recommendation is always cut down on the amount of dressing you're using. Use dressings that don't rely on fats. Use dressings that are more reliant on acids like lemon juice, orange juice, pineapple juice, things like that. And look for dressings that bring with them a lot of flavor so that when you use less, it still brings that amount of satiety that you want.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your presentation. And if you have any questions while Corey is speaking, go ahead and type them in and we'll ask him in our next segment.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's continue. Moving on from our variety of vegetables here, the next thing that I want to talk about is the idea of convenience. For me, when I go home at the end of the day, I'm not really in the mood to open up my refrigerator, start getting out all of these baggies of vegetables, go to my sink, start washing individual things, cutting them all up, etc. It would be really, really nice if I could do what non-vegetarians are able to do and just get one food item out of my refrigerator, like a steak. Put some salt and pepper on it, put it on a grill or a hot pan. 5 minutes later, I have my meal. We can't do that in the veggie world. Our products take a long time to prepare. They take a little bit longer to cook. And generally speaking, we're not just taking a carrot out of the refrigerator and cooking it for dinner. So we have this variety of foods. It takes longer for us to prepare them. The idea of that when we get home and start thinking about dinner is daunting. What if we could change that? What if we could make it so that dinner was easy to prepare with a lot of vegetables in it? One thing that I teach in my classes is efficiency. If you're cooking in a professional kitchen, if you take too long to make the food, it's a cost that the kitchen shouldn't have to incur. So we're always looking for ways of making it faster, making it easier, making it more efficient. Can we do that in our kitchens at home? If we have a bag of vegetables that we bring home from the grocery store, why not spend 20 minutes immediately, wash everything that's in that bag, cut it up into small pieces, put it into containers in your refrigerator. All the work is essentially done. All you have to do when you're ready to make your pasta primavera is get out a couple of containers of the veggies that you want to have in your pasta, take the quantities out that you want to cook, saute those, add your cooked pasta, and you're ready to go. If we had the convenience products in our refrigerator, we wouldn't think twice about using more veggies, more fruits, more legumes, etc. in our cooking because it would make it so convenient. So that is one tip that I can give you that would essentially allow you to easily add a lot of veggies to your cooking. Another thing is change the paradigm about your cooking. We talk about farmers markets. We talk a lot now about eating food that's fresh, eating food that's seasonal, eating foods that are local. If you're going to do that, if you're going to walk down to your farmer's market, I guarantee that your farmer isn't going to have every single vegetable available all year long. Vegetables, fruits, they have seasons, and we should really key into those seasons in order to find the fruits and veggies that are going to be the freshest, best value to us, lowest cost, have the most flavor, etc. So instead of going to a magazine, going to the internet, finding a recipe that looks great, and then going to your grocery store to find all the ingredients for it, flip that around. Go to the grocery store, go to the farmer's market, go to your local farmer, walk out into your backyard and raid your own garden. Find what is the freshest, what is the best thing that you can use that day, then take those things home and look at those vegetables, those fruits, and say, what can I do with these things? It's pretty easy to do that now. There's plenty of apps available where you can just say, I have these ingredients, what can I make with these ingredients? And it'll give you the recipes that you need to do that. So that is one tip that you can use to always make sure that you are using the tastiest, freshest, most wonderful fruits and vegetables in your cooking. Another one is, don't be afraid to bring in other flavors. If you had to eat steamed carrots all the time, that would get so boring that you wouldn't want steamed carrots anymore. But if you change those steamed carrots by adding a little bit of sauce to it, by adding a little bit of a seasoning blend, a spice blend, anything like that, that would make it very convenient, very good to have more variety. I like to keep a selection of prepared sauces in my refrigerator at all times. I have things like salsa, teriyaki sauce, barbecue sauce, ranch dressing that I make myself, things like that, things that are very basic, understandable, and can be easily incorporated into your cooking. And if you just know what you have in your refrigerator and you can bring a little bit of that extra flavor in at any given time, that helps to liven up the foods and again, make it more creative, more interesting, more enjoyable. The other thing I'll say about sauces is play around with the sauces a little bit. Just because the food you happen to be making is from a specific ethnic background doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stick to that. You can, but maybe try a different sauce on something that you already know. Try it in a different way. That's another way of bringing that intrigue into your cooking that can help you to not get burdened with the same veggies all the time. Now, there's one missing piece that we talk about in vegetarian cooking, and it's the savory component. Everyone knows sweet, sour, salty, bitter, but the fifth flavor dynamic that we talk about is savory. In non-vegetarian cooking, if you're a meat eater, you know this very well. If you put a piece of meat on a grill and grill it, it's very savory. It has that just essence of earthiness that's so good and people crave. But if you're thinking about, okay, what about my veggies, my carrots, my celery, my onions, they don't really have that component. And we really try and find that in the vegetarian world, and unfortunately it's very difficult to find it. A couple of ingredients that you can use that will bring that in, I've listed a few here. We've got dried mushrooms, any mushrooms really, but dried mushrooms specifically. Sun-dried tomatoes can definitely bring in that savory component. Kelp. Kelp is a wonderful, although not well-known ingredient to use in American cooking, but Asian countries have really keyed into this, Japan specifically, and understanding that there's a component in kelp that is very savory, and they use that as a basis for flavoring of their soups and sauces. And then in Australia, they use yeast concentrates. Marmite is a brand name that we know, and those can be very savory as well. So looking for ways of building that savory component into your food is one of the critical things that I try and do in my kitchens in order to make sure that the foods have that component that non-meat eaters really are looking for. And it really helps to build a dynamic structure into vegetarian foods that can sometimes be lacking. So that's one area where maybe your recipes might need a little bit of development, and maybe an area where a little bit of research might be a good thing. To sum all of this up, bringing in fruits and vegetables into your cooking, once you start doing it, once you start looking for those creative outlets, once you start to be a little bit adventurous and try new things, you're going to find that it's going to become a passion for you. You're going to want to try everything, which is great. I hope that's what happens. But what I have seen is some people have gone very far in doing this with raw diets, with, like I mentioned before, using a portobello steak as a substitute for meat all the time. And those things can certainly have their place, but be aware that that's really not what we're looking for. That's not the end game here. Using zucchini in a special cutter to make long pieces of zucchini and using that as pasta. Certainly an intriguing dish and one that would be very fun to play with a little bit, but not something that we're expecting that you're going to be doing in your kitchen because of this discussion. Also, think beyond just fresh foods. Fruits and vegetables come in lots and lots of forms. Freeze-dried fruits and vegetables can be very fun to play with. I made cupcakes once and I wanted to flavor the frosting with something other than an artificial flavoring, an artificial coloring. So I got freeze-dried berries and I ground them into a powder and I mixed that into my frosting. I didn't even realize how much fun that would be for people, but people really enjoyed strawberry and banana and pineapple and even banana flavored frosting on a cupcake, and it all came from natural sources. There's freeze-dried, there's canned foods. My students think that I am kidding when I say in class that sometimes canned foods can be better for you, better tasting than the fresh products that we find in the grocery store. One classic example of this is tomatoes. Tomatoes have a very distinct season. They are a very late summer type of product. And other times in the year, like wintertime, the vegetables, the tomatoes that we're seeing in our grocery stores just don't have the flavor. And so I will go to a canned tomato at that time of year because the canned tomatoes, which were canned at the height of their season, can bring so much more flavor, so much more nutrition even in some cases. Fresh, canned, dried, frozen fruits and veggies can be very convenient because frozen fruits and vegetables are already washed, cut into pieces, very easy to use in your cooking. So please look to other forms of produce, not just fresh, especially at times of the year when fresh can be a little bit more difficult to come by. So we've talked about a lot of stuff in this discussion. We've talked about trying to be creative with your cooking, trying to venture out of your paradigm, looking for fruits and vegetables that you don't necessarily know. How can you use them? When should you use them? Recreating the dishes that you already know and love by incorporating more fruits and vegetables in them. Don't forget legumes, beans, split peas, lentils, etc., beans, nuts, all qualify as the fruits and vegetables in the fruits and vegetable world. So please try and incorporate more fun things in your summer cooking. I look forward to more questions, and let's see what people are asking now.
Thank you, Corey. So one question that we have from Beamer27 is, you talked about having prepared vegetables in the refrigerator.
Yes.
So the question is, how long do they last in the fridge?
That's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on their stage of ripeness when you bought them and when they went into your refrigerator. It also depends on the fruit or vegetable. For instance, I have had fresh potatoes last for 3 months, which to me seems like a long time. That was very atypical, but it's just because it was that perfect time of year for that particular vegetable. So carrots will last a long time. Celery will last a long time. Fresh herbs will not. Fresh herbs will go stale, will go bad on you very quickly. Incidentally, in order to preserve fresh herbs and fresh lettuces, don't let them sit in water. If you're going to keep them in the produce bag that they came in, that's a very nice way of preserving them, but throw a dry paper towel in with them. It absorbs the excess moisture, and then they don't sit in that water. That's where they tend to rot.
Okay, great advice. So our last question for today is, I see more greenish tomatoes at the store. Do red tomatoes offer better nutrients?
Nutrition, that's a good question as well. What I will tell you about green tomatoes is typically we are picking tomatoes in a green state in order to be able to get them to the market, which takes a couple days to weeks. Tomatoes ripen very quickly, so if we picked them ripe, they wouldn't make it to the grocery store shelf before they were essentially not usable. So we have to pick them slightly green. And if you pick them before they're truly ripe, yes, it does stand to reason that they're going to have less nutrition. So yes, if you can grow your own tomatoes in your own garden, you're going to have a better flavor and a better nutrition profile in those products.
And if you have a garden, you can send me your tomatoes because they are delicious off the vine. So thank you so much, Corey, for being here. This has been very, very useful to getting some summer fruits and vegetables in our diet.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. We do this every single month. Our next session is actually going to be with Randall Walker, and he's going to talk about how to mend broken relationships. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Corey. See you next time.